Have you ever felt irritated by the advice of others? Are there truths you don't want to hear but cannot deny? That is the spirit of Stoicism. Stoic philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius have conveyed truths that help people become stronger, but they are not always easy to accept. As Epictetus once said, "Those who step out of the philosophy of Stoicism must feel pain, because they have realized how weak they truly are." Today, I will share 50 harsh truths of Stoicism, but with a deeper, broader perspective, along with real-life stories and practical solutions to help you apply this philosophy in your life. Remember, you may not agree with some of them, but if you patiently accept them, you will see your life change for the stronger. Life is a strict teacher. Difficulties are not here to harm you, but to train you to become stronger. Stoic philosophy has long affirmed that life is not a series of random events, but a great school where humans are challenged to become stronger. Hardships, suffering, and failure do not come to destroy us, but to train us and help us grow. Imagine life as a sparring partner in martial arts. A weak opponent does not help you become stronger, but a stronger, more challenging opponent will force you to develop your skills. If you refuse to spar with a strong opponent, you will remain weak. If you embrace the challenge, you will become stronger over time. Philosophy is not just theory, it is an observation of real life. And perhaps no one understands this better than the great figures in history. Let's look back at a classic story to understand why adversity is a gift that helps people become great. Helen Keller was born healthy, but a disease left her blind and deaf at just 19 months old. Unable to see, hear, or speak, most people would think her life was over. But with her determination and the help of her great teacher and Sullivan, she learned to communicate through handwritten signs and symbols. Eventually, she not only learned to speak but became a great writer, speaker, and social activist. She once said, "The difficulties I encountered helped make me stronger. Life, no matter how hard, is still worth living. There is no limit too big unless you impose that limit on yourself." So when you face difficulties, you can 1. Complain, blame fate, and give up. 2. Accept it, learn from it, and become stronger. If you choose the second option, you will gradually turn adversity into strength, just as the great figures in history did. So next time you face difficulties, remember, life is not against you, it is training you to become stronger. Since ancient times, wise men have always reminded us that the ego is the greatest enemy of growth. It makes us deluded about ourselves, unwilling to accept mistakes, unwilling to listen, and ultimately prevents us from progressing. Imagine a mountain climber. When he believes he has reached the highest peak, he will stop trying to climb higher. But in reality, the peak can always be higher, and only those who are humble can continue to progress. Socrates humbly said, "I only know that I know nothing." If there is anyone considered a master of humility in philosophy, it is Socrates. He was one of the greatest philosophers in history. But he admitted that he knew nothing. One time, a prophet claimed that Socrates was the wisest man. He did not believe it and decided to find those who were considered the wisest to verify. But after meeting politicians, craftsmen, and poets, Socrates realized that they thought they knew a lot, but in reality, they knew nothing. They were trapped in their own egos and refused to acknowledge their shortcomings. And it was thanks to this humility that Socrates never stopped learning and became one of the greatest philosophers of all time. When you believe you know everything, you will stop listening and stop learning. But if you always maintain a humble spirit, you will always progress. Alexander the Great is one of the greatest conquerors in history. He built one of the largest empires of the ancient world, but despite possessing absolute power, he still had a rare spirit of humility. One day, Alexander came to meet Diogenes, a famous philosopher of the Stoic school. At that time, Diogenes was lying in the sun. Alexander said, "I am Alexander the Great, what can I do for you?" Diogenes looked up and simply said, "You can stand aside to let me enjoy the sunlight." Anyone could consider this an insult. But Alexander did not get angry. Instead, he turned to his attendants and said, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be like Diogenes." Alexander's humility helped him continue learning from wise people, no matter how low their position was. No matter how successful you are, there is always something to learn. Those who are truly great never let their ego cloud their wisdom. If the ego is the enemy, how can you avoid it? Always remind yourself that you do not know everything. Learn from Socrates. "I only know that I know nothing." If you always keep this mindset, you will always be able to learn more. Don't let success make you complacent. When you achieve something, ask yourself, what more can I learn? Listen more, talk less. Humble people listen more than they speak. Learn to listen to others' viewpoints instead of just defending your own. Accept feedback and learn from mistakes. Don't fear criticism. Truly skilled people welcome feedback because it is the fastest way to learn. Learn from anyone, regardless of their status. A street sweeper can teach you something. A child can offer you a new perspective. Keep an open mind to continually learn. Remember, the ego can be your greatest enemy. Or you can control it or let it continue to grow. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. Life is like a river that flows endlessly, and time sweeps everything away. Even the greatest people in history, emperors, philosophers, inventors, could not resist being forgotten. Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in history, built a vast empire stretching from Greece to India. He never lost a battle and was revered as a living god. However, in 323 BC, when Alexander died at the age of 32, he learned a painful lesson. Fame and power could not follow him to the grave. Before he died, he made 3 strange requests. His coffin should have 2 hands sticking out, to show that even Alexander could not take anything with him after death. Gold and treasures should be scattered along the funeral procession, to remind everyone that all material possessions are meaningless when we leave the world. The best doctor must carry his coffin, to prove that even the smartest people cannot save us from death. No matter how great you are, in the end, you are just an ordinary person forgotten by time. The only thing that remains is the positive impact you leave on the world. If everything is fleeting, what should we do? This is the approach of Stoic philosophy. Focus on what you can control. You cannot control whether you will be forgotten, but you can control how you live each day. Live ethically, with values. Don't chase fame or money, these will disappear over time. Invest in wisdom, kindness, and eternal values. Practice memento mori, remember that you will die, remind yourself every day that you will not live forever. That will help you focus on what truly matters. Cherish every moment, time passes quickly. Don't waste it on meaningless things. Live fully every day. Everything will eventually be forgotten, fame, wealth, even powerful empires. But that does not mean life is meaningless. The true meaning of life does not lie in what you achieve, but in how you live each day. So ask yourself, if you knew everything would disappear, how would you live differently? Humans are always obsessed with perfection. We often want everything to be perfect before starting something. But philosophy shows us that perfection is an illusion, and if we keep chasing it, we will never act. Seneca once said, "We often procrastinate not because we have too little time, but because we waste time on useless things." One of the most useless things is waiting for perfection. Michelangelo, one of the greatest artists of the Renaissance, was always obsessed with perfection. There is a story that he spent many years sculpting a statue, but in the end, he was still not satisfied with his work. When a friend asked why he didn't finish the statue, Michelangelo replied, "It's not perfect enough." That statue was never completed, and it ultimately remained an unfinished block of stone. If you keep waiting for perfection, you might never finish anything. Not just Michelangelo, but even Leonardo da Vinci, the genius of the Renaissance, also got stuck in perfectionism. One of his most famous works, the Mona Lisa, was painted and repainted for over 16 years. Da Vinci always felt it was not perfect, and he continuously made adjustments to every small detail. Some of his paintings were never completed, simply because he felt they were not good enough. However, his imperfect works still became great masterpieces. Perfection is unattainable, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't finish your work. Stoics believe that life is like a book, and every day is a new page. If you keep waiting for a perfect page, you will never write anything. Seneca once said, "We learn how to do by actually doing, not by waiting." This means, if you want to write a book, start writing even if it's not good. If you want to start a business, start even if you don't have everything perfect. If you want to change your life, start with what you have right now. Action is more important than overthinking. The first draft will never be perfect, but if you don't write it, you will never have a completed book. If you feel stuck in perfectionism, here are some approaches to help you overcome it. Set strict deadlines. If you don't have a deadline, you will keep postponing things to make them perfect. Set a deadline and commit to it. Accept that mistakes are part of the process. No one gets it right the first time. Allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. Remember that completing is more important than perfecting. A good product that's not perfect is still better than a perfect product that never launches. Focus on progress, not perfection. Instead of asking, "Is it perfect?" ask, "Is it better than yesterday?" Waiting for perfection only causes delays. If you want to achieve something in life, act even if you are not ready. Seneca said, "We do not live to wait, we live to act." Live by values, not emotions. True wisdom comes from self-control. Emotions are a natural part of being human, but to attain true wisdom, we must learn to control our emotions and live by values instead of letting emotions dictate our actions. Stoic philosophers believe that emotions are temporary, but the right values are eternal. If you make decisions based on fleeting emotions, you may regret it later. But if you act on solid principles and values, you will never regret it. Marcus Aurelius faced countless challenges: war, plague, and betrayal from close companions. One of the most famous stories about Marcus Aurelius is when his best friend, Avidius Cassius, betrayed him and declared himself emperor. But instead of getting angry, Marcus did not act on emotion. He did not immediately send troops to kill the traitor. Instead, he waited, reflected, and made a decision based on reason. Ultimately, the army loyal to Marcus put down the rebellion. But when Marcus was informed that Cassius had been killed, he was not happy. Instead, he felt regret because he wanted to forgive his old friend. In Meditations, he wrote, "Nothing can harm me unless I allow it. I can control how I respond to the world." Do not let temporary emotions decide your actions. Live by values, not by emotions. Epictetus was born a slave in the Roman Empire. When he was young, he was brutally treated by his master, to the point where his leg was broken and he became disabled for life. But instead of harboring hatred or complaining, Epictetus realized that he could not control the circumstances, but he could control his thoughts. He taught, "You cannot control the world, but you can control how you react to it." Later, when he was freed, he became one of the greatest philosophers, teaching that true freedom does not come from circumstances, but from how you control your mind. No matter the circumstances, you can control your attitude and actions. How to control your emotions and live by values. Remind yourself that emotions are only temporary. If you are angry, wait 5 minutes before reacting. If you are worried, ask yourself if this will still matter in 5 years. Always ask, "What are my values?" Before acting, ask, "Does this action reflect the person I want to become?" Learn to separate yourself from your emotions. Stoics believe that you are not your emotions. Observe them, but don't let them control you. Remember that self-control is real power. The strong person is not the one who defeats others, but the one who defeats themselves. Life is not always easy. There will be times when you want to get angry, give up, or take revenge. But if you control your emotions and live by values, you will have a strong and meaningful life. Marcus Aurelius said, "The outside may be chaotic, but our mind must remain calm." So, will you let emotions control you, or will you control yourself? The world never stands still. Everything around us is always in motion, always changing, whether we want it to or not. From the small things in daily life to the major events in history, change is an inevitable law. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything is changing, even you. Do not fear it, but learn how to live in harmony with it." The great people in history were those who understood the law of change and knew how to adapt instead of resisting it. If there is one philosopher most famous for the subject of change, it is Heraclitus. He is the one who said the famous quote, "You cannot step into the same river twice, for the water has already passed, and you have changed." This means the world is always moving. Nothing is fixed. Human beings themselves are always changing, whether we realize it or not. But instead of fearing change, Heraclitus advised that we should accept and adjust to it. Rather than trying to cling to the past or resist change, learn to flow with it. In The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin made a famous statement. "It is not the strongest or the most intelligent species that survive, but the ones most adaptable to change." Darwin's theory of evolution shows that those organisms that can change and adapt to new environments will have a higher chance of survival. This is not only true in biology but also in life. Businesses that can adapt to new markets will survive. Individuals who know how to learn and develop new skills will not fall behind. Those willing to change their mindset will more easily succeed. If you don't want to be left behind, learn how to change before you are forced to. Seneca once said, "Do not expect everything to stay the same. Change is inevitable. The only thing you can do is be ready to face it." Seneca understood that all relationships will change. All fame, money, and power can disappear. Even our bodies will age over time. But instead of worrying or resisting change, he advised us to mentally prepare ourselves to face it calmly. Change can cause you pain. But if you accept it, you will find peace of mind. If you find it difficult to face change, here are some ways to help you adapt more easily. Recognize that change is inevitable. Everything in life changes: work, relationships, health. Instead of trying to control everything, learn to be flexible with it. Always prepare for the unexpected. Don't let yourself be shocked and everything changes. Always have a backup plan for every situation. Focus on what you can control. You cannot control the economy, but you can learn new skills to adapt to it. You cannot control aging, but you can take care of your health to live better. Don't see change as a threat, see it as an opportunity. Every change is an opportunity to grow. If your job changes, it might be an opportunity to find a better one. If a relationship changes, it might be an opportunity to grow. Change is inevitable. But how you respond to it will determine your life. You can fear it and fight it, or you can accept it, learn from it, and become stronger because of it. Will you continue clinging to the past? Or will you embrace change and move forward? There is a great paradox in life. We think that material wealth brings freedom, but it is actually the chains that bind us. We want more money to feel secure, but the more we have, the more we fear losing it. We want recognition from others, but the more we crave it, the more we lose ourselves. We think that fame and status will make us free, but in reality, they make us dependent on others' opinions. Stoicism has long emphasized that true freedom does not come from ownership, but from being unbound. One of the most famous stories about giving up material possessions to find freedom is the story of Diogenes, a Stoic philosopher. He lived like a beggar, with no home, no possessions, and only a wooden cup to drink from. One day, he saw a boy drinking water from his hands. Immediately, he threw away his wooden cup and said, "I have allowed myself to be bound by a useless cup." The most famous story about Diogenes is when he met Alexander the Great. Alexander came to see Diogenes and said, "I am Alexander the Great. What can I do for you?" Diogenes, who was lying in the sun, simply said, "You can move aside so that I can enjoy the sunlight." Alexander laughed and said to his attendants, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be like Diogenes." Diogenes had no money, no fame, but he had something that even the emperor craved: true freedom. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at the time, understood that power does not equal freedom. He wrote in Meditations, "Though I am emperor, I am still just a human. Fame will fade. Money will disappear. Only virtue remains." Marcus did not let himself be bound by the luxury of the palace. He lived with discipline, slept on a hard bed, and ate simply. He knew that if he allowed himself to be bound by power, he would lose his inner freedom. Even with everything, you are not truly free if you are dependent on them. In the 19th century, philosopher Henry David Thoreau abandoned urban life to live alone in the woods at Walden. He lived simply, eating only what he grew, writing books, and reflecting on life. Thoreau believed that modern society shackles people to money, fame, and things that are not truly necessary. He wrote, "We do not own material things own us." The minimalist lifestyle helped Thoreau realize that happiness does not come from having more things, but from needing less. To achieve true freedom, what do you need to do? Reduce dependence on money. Learn how to live simply. Control your desires instead of letting them control you. Don't let others' opinions control you. Recognition from others does not make you more valuable. Live by your own standards, not by others' expectations. Focus on what truly matters. Possessions can be lost, but wisdom and virtue will stay with you forever. Freedom does not come from owning more, but from needing less. The truly free person is not the one who has the most money, but the one who is not dependent on money or the recognition of others. As Diogenes taught, when you no longer need anything, you will have everything. Since birth, humans have been influenced by others' opinions. Society imposes standards of success and happiness, causing many to become trapped in the cycle of seeking recognition from others. We often think that we are only happy when praised by others. We are only successful when society acknowledges us. We are only valuable when others recognize us. But Stoic philosophy has shown that true happiness does not come from the outside, but from within. Success is not what others think of you, but how you define it. Marcus Aurelius, possibly the most powerful person in the world at the time, knew that no matter how great you are, there will always be critics. In Meditations, he wrote, "Your happiness should not depend on anything outside of your control." He also reminded himself every morning, "Today I will meet liars, envious people, and rude people. But they cannot harm me unless I allow it to happen." Marcus understood that you cannot control how others think of you, but you can control how you respond. You cannot please everyone. And you don't need to. Focus on living according to your own values. Epictetus taught, "You may take away my physical freedom, but you cannot take away my peace of mind." One day, his master deliberately broke his leg to punish him. But instead of getting angry or grieving, Epictetus calmly said, "If you continue to do this, my leg will break." And when his leg did break, he simply said, "I told you so." Later, when he was free, he did not pursue money or fame, but focused on teaching others that true happiness does not lie in external circumstances, but in the mind. You cannot control the world, but you can control your thoughts. In a letter to his friend, Seneca wrote, "A person who lives morally, doing what is right even when no one is watching, is true success." Seneca once practiced the lesson of poverty. Each month, he spent a few days living like a poor person, eating dry bread, sleeping on the floor, wearing tattered clothes. He did this to remind himself, if tomorrow I lose everything, I can still live happily. Success is not about having a lot of money or being praised by society. Success is living the way you want, without being bound by the fear of loss. How to avoid depending on others' recognition. Identify your own values. What do you want in life? Are you pursuing what you truly want? Or just what society tells you to want? Don't compare yourself to others. Your life is unique, don't chase others' standards. Accept that no one can please everyone. No matter what you do, there will always be someone who doesn't like you. That doesn't matter, as long as you are living according to your values. Learn to be happy alone. If you can be happy without needing recognition, you have achieved true freedom. Happiness does not come from social recognition, but from living according to your own values. As Marcus Aurelius said, if you live to please others, you will always be their slave. So, are you living for yourself, or living by someone else's definition? Marcus Aurelius was not only a great emperor of Rome, but also a Stoic philosopher. His life was not easy, he faced constant wars, epidemics, and betrayal from close companions. Many people in his position might have collapsed under adversity. But he chose to transform it into an opportunity to cultivate patience and calm. In Meditations, he wrote, "Nothing happens to us that cannot become an opportunity for us to practice our virtues." Even when the country was falling into chaos, he maintained discipline, kept his mind steady, and continued to lead wisely. Every challenge is an opportunity for you to practice important virtues: patience, calmness, and wisdom. Nelson Mandela is one of the greatest symbols of freedom and justice. But before becoming the president of South Africa, he endured 27 years of imprisonment. An ordinary person might have collapsed under such adversity, but Mandela chose to transform his time in prison into an opportunity to develop his intellect and spirit. Instead of harboring hatred, he focused on learning, developing his mindset, and planning for a better future. After being released from prison, he did not call for revenge, but used forgiveness to unite South Africa and help the country overcome racial divisions. He once said, "I do not lose, either I win, or I learn a lesson." Even when you are placed in the worst circumstances, you can still turn it into an opportunity to learn and grow. If you are facing difficulty, try applying these principles. View challenges as opportunities to learn. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this situation? Every challenge carries a valuable lesson. Control your thoughts. You cannot control the world, but you can control how you perceive it. Persevere and never give up. Failure is not the end, it is part of the journey. Practice Stoic resilience. Every challenge is an exercise to cultivate intellect and virtue. Adversity is not something that destroys you, it is an opportunity for you to grow. So do not fear adversity when it comes your way. As Marcus Aurelius said, what stands in the way becomes the way. Will you let difficulty defeat you, or will you turn it into motivation to move forward? In Stoic philosophy, self-discipline is the foundation of a meaningful life. But there is one important thing many people misunderstand: self-discipline is not for imposing on others, but for training yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant of the mistakes of others, but strict with yourself." This means, you have the right to demand constant improvement from yourself. But you cannot force others to live by your standards. You can control your actions, but you cannot control how others behave. Many great philosophers lived by this principle. And history has shown that self-discipline is the path to greatness, but tolerance is the key to building a better society. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful emperor of the world at the time. But he never allowed himself to become lazy or degenerate. He slept on a hard bed, ate simply, and spent time every day reflecting on ethics and philosophy. But despite being strict with himself, he did not impose this on others. When his courtiers lived in luxury, or when his soldiers were lazy, he did not punish them harshly, but tried to lead them by his own example. He wrote, "Every day we will encounter selfish, deceitful, envious people. But they do this because they do not know what is right. I cannot control them, but I can control how I respond to them. Train self-discipline in yourself, but do not expect others to live like you." Tolerance does not mean weakness, it shows inner strength. Mahatma Gandhi is one of the greatest symbols of the 20th century. He led India to independence without using violence, thanks to his extraordinary self-discipline. Every day, he woke up at 4 a.m. to meditate and read. He ate only simple foods, wore simple clothes, and rejected luxury. He trained himself not to be swayed by emotions, even when insulted or attacked. But Gandhi never forced others to live like him. When a follower wanted to force others to live ascetically, Gandhi said, "Be a model through action, not command. Train self-discipline. But do not force others to live like you." How to practice self-discipline without imposing on others. Be a role model first. If you want others to work hard, work harder than them. If you want others to be kind first. Don't expect everyone to have the same standards as you. Everyone has their own journey. Remember that tolerance is a strength, not a weakness. Tolerance does not mean being lenient, it means you are strong enough to accept differences. Train yourself every day, but do not impose your standards on others. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Live with discipline, but do not forget tolerance." Have you lived by this principle? Stoicism is not an easy philosophy to embrace. But it is through the challenges and adversities in life that we grow and become stronger. As Stoic philosophers taught, self-discipline is the foundation for building a meaningful life. But it also requires tolerance and respect for others' differences. Tolerance is not weakness, but inner strength, the ability to accept differences. And hold firm to your principles in any circumstance. Just like Marcus Aurelius, Gandhi, or Epictetus, they train themselves every day, not imposing their standards on others, but leading by example through actions. When you face difficulty, remember that every challenge is an opportunity to learn and grow. Life is not working against you. It is training you to become stronger. Live with discipline, but do not forget tolerance. Embrace the challenges and use them to practice virtues and wisdom. Life does not last forever. But the values and virtues you build will live on. So, will you live a disciplined life, but full of tolerance, or will you continue to search for perfection without ever acting? The decision is yours.